Be me, just a regular guy, early 30s, moved into Willow Creek Estates, a new subdivision. My job is fully remote, flexible hours. I picked this place for the quiet and the promise of well-maintained common areas, a fresh start. My German Shepherd, Atlas, is my registered service animal. He's for my epilepsy, a fact carefully documented with the HOA. Be not me, Brenda, my next-door neighbor. Retired with a perpetual scowl and an insatiable need to control every blade of grass, every misplaced recycling bin, every single detail in our nascent community. She moved in early and somehow leveraged that into being the unofficial HOA watchdog, attending every meeting, taking copious notes, and then aggressively interpreting the bylaws for everyone else. Willow Creek Estates was built by Viridian Homes, fast and cheap. One consequence was the property lines. They were, to put it mildly, suggestions. My front lawn technically overlapped a sliver of what Brenda considered her side, an awkward triangular patch near the street curb. It was maybe 2 feet by 3 feet at its widest. Brenda's surveillance began subtle. I'd see her peeking through her blinds. Then she started taking pictures. My trash cans left out a few hours too long after collection. My car parked just slightly askew on my own driveway. I'd receive passive-aggressive emails, always forwarded from the official HOA address, but clearly drafted by Brenda, detailing trivial infractions. One Tuesday, I was out walking Atlas. He's a big dog, but gentle and always on a leash, vest on. Brenda intercepted me at the corner of our properties, near the disputed patch of grass. She held a bright yellow plastic ruler. "Your grass," she announced, holding the ruler to my lawn. "It's pushing 4 inches. The covenants clearly state 3 inches maximum." Her eyes narrowed, fixed on Atlas. "And that dog. I've seen him shed." I calmly explained that the measurement was on my side of the property marker, and technically the HOA allowed for a half-inch variance. "As for Atlas, he's a service animal, Brenda. He's allowed." She scoffed. "Service animal? I don't see him doing anything but sniffing your post box, and my husband is allergic. We have rights to enjoy our property without excessive dog dander." She then declared that the small patch of grass, the sliver, was her property and insisted I trim it. I just nodded, noting her words. A few weeks later, Brenda went full Karen. My side yard, where Atlas often did his business, and I always cleaned up immediately, had a small, decorative bird bath. It was simple, ceramic, maybe a foot tall, completely innocuous. Brenda filed an official complaint. "Accessory structures?" she shrieked at an HOA meeting, pointing dramatically at my house on a projected map. "Article 7, Section 3, no unapproved accessory structures inside yards." She ignored the several gnomes, flamingos, and even a miniature lighthouse in other neighbors' yards. It was clearly about Atlas. It was about me. The HOA board, a collection of tired retirees and busy professionals, usually just ignored Brenda's more outlandish claims. But this time, she had whipped herself into a frenzy, even bringing in photoshopped images of my bird bath towering over my fence line. I showed them the original purchase receipt, proving it was under the height limit and not a structure in the way the bylaws intended. They grudgingly dismissed her complaint. I could feel her fury simmering. The air between us grew thick with unspoken animosity. She'd stand at her window, staring, when I let Atlas out. She'd meticulously sweep her driveway whenever I parked my car, just a few feet away from where my tire touched the asphalt. The property line dispute became a daily, silent battle of wills, a passive-aggressive contest of trivialities. I kept my lawn pristine. I moved my trash cans back immediately. I documented everything. Then came the breaking point. It began subtly, an email from the HOA about revisiting pet policies for larger breeds. I knew immediately where it came from. Brenda had somehow managed to corner enough board members to initiate a discussion. The very next week, I received a formal notice from the HOA. It stated that due to concerns about the size and potential impact of certain animals on community aesthetics and resident allergies, a new bylaw was being proposed. This new bylaw would restrict dogs over 50 pounds to interior-only access, only allowing them outside for elimination on a short leash, and then only on their own property, not common areas. It included a rider for excessive shedding breeds, which included German Shepherds, requiring owners to provide proof of professional grooming every 2 weeks. This was a direct, thinly veiled attack on Atlas. And me. It was ridiculous. Atlas is over 50 pounds, a GSD. The new restrictions would make it impossible for him to function as my service animal. He needed to be able to accompany me on walks for my health, to alert me to potential seizures, to provide mobility support when needed. It was also a blatant violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act and likely Fair Housing Act guidelines, not to mention our own state's service animal laws. I sent a calm, factual email to the HOA reiterating Atlas's status as a registered, medically necessary service animal. I attached his updated certifications, my doctor's letter, and relevant HOA statutes. I reminded them of their legal obligations. Brenda, however, was undeterred. She called an emergency board meeting, bypassing the normal channels, and somehow convinced enough board members, mostly those who feared her wrath, that my dog was a nuisance and a liability. She claimed I was abusing the system by designating a large dog as a service animal just to get around common-sense pet rules. She brought up her allergies again, and the vague safety concerns from children playing outside. She then presented a completely fabricated account of Atlas barking aggressively at children and chasing a cat. All lies. Atlas is a highly trained, calm animal. She claimed my unwillingness to compromise on the trivial grass patch was evidence of my general defiance to HOA rules. The board, under Brenda's relentless pressure, voted to implement the new bylaw immediately. They sent me a notice. Atlas was in violation. I had 2 weeks to comply or face escalating fines and potential eviction proceedings for repeated breach of covenant. They demanded proof of his service animal training from an HOA-approved facility, a requirement not present in any existing bylaw, nor legally enforceable. They were forcing my hand. I didn't argue, not anymore. I simply sent a terse reply acknowledging receipt of their notice. Brenda was triumphant. I saw her preening, walking around the neighborhood with a smug smirk, looking at me with a victorious glint in her eyes. She thought she had won. She thought she had finally cornered the disobedient neighbor with the excessive dog. What Brenda and the easily swayed board members didn't know was that I had gone into read-only mode months ago. Every email, every interaction, every perceived slight from Brenda had been meticulously logged. I had started a digital folder, date-stamped and cross-referenced. I had audio recordings of my interactions with Brenda, discreetly made on my phone, including her demands about the grass and her comments about Atlas. I had security camera footage of Atlas calmly existing in our yard, disproving her aggressive barking claims. I also had a full, unredacted copy of the Willow Creek Estate's HOA covenants, conditions, and restrictions, downloaded directly from the county recorder's office. I had highlighted every relevant section concerning pets, service animals, and the board's due process. More importantly, I had downloaded every single publicly available legal precedent regarding HOAs and service animals in our state, as well as federal HOA guidelines. I spent hours poring over the documents, not looking for a way out, but for a way in. A way to let Brenda and the HOA board's egregious overreach be their own undoing. My master plan wasn't to fight their ridiculous bylaw. It was to let them pass it, enforce it, and then watch the consequences unfold. The critical loophole wasn't in the pet policy. It was in the enforcement policy. The HOA's own rules stated that any bylaw amendment required a 30-day notice to all homeowners, followed by a public comment period, and then a formal vote at a scheduled meeting with a quorum present. The emergency meeting Brenda manipulated was explicitly not a scheduled meeting. No 30-day notice was given. No formal public comment period was observed. It was invalid from the start. I also knew the HOA's liability insurance policy. Section 4 billion explicitly stated that actions taken in direct contravention of federal anti-discrimination laws or state fair housing acts, including those pertaining to service animals, are explicitly excluded from coverage, and personal liability may be pursued against board members. I had a copy of that too. So when the 2-week deadline arrived, I did not comply. I simply sent a very formal letter to the HOA board, certified mail, return receipt requested. It was concise. It stated my position, referenced the HOA, Fair Housing Act, and state laws. It detailed the invalidity of their new bylaw due to procedural errors. It highlighted the specific clauses in their liability insurance. And finally, it announced my intent to file a federal discrimination lawsuit against the Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association, and personally, against the individual board members who voted for the discriminatory bylaw, if they did not rescind their notice and issue a formal apology within 72 hours. Attached were copies of all my documentation, Atlas's certifications, doctor's letters, the HOA's own invalid meeting minutes, and the insurance policy excerpts. Brenda, of course, found out immediately. She burst out of her house, waving her hands. "This is outrageous. You're trying to blackmail us," she shrieked as I watered my flowers. "You think you can just ignore the rules? That dog is a menace, and that little patch of grass, it's mine." "Mine," I lowered the watering can. "Brenda," I said, my voice calm, "I have followed every rule, documented every interaction. You and the board you pressured have not. This isn't blackmail. It's letting the rules do what they're designed to do." She tried to rally the other neighbors, screaming about my bullying tactics. But by then, the HOA's actual legal counsel had gotten involved. The board, terrified of personal liability, immediately rescinded their notice to me. They issued a groveling apology via email, blaming an administrative oversight regarding the procedural requirements. But it was too late. I had already filed the initial paperwork with the Department of Justice, Housing and Urban Development, and the State Civil Rights Commission. My case was airtight. The federal agencies launched investigations. The immediate fallout was spectacular. The HOA's insurance company dropped them like a hot potato, citing the gross negligence of the board. The HOA itself was facing massive fines from the federal government for discrimination. The initial estimates were in the six figures, all because Brenda and the board she bullied had insisted on banning a service dog. The HOA called an emergency meeting, but this time it was a proper one. The first order of business was removing Brenda from her self-appointed compliance officer role. The second was a vote of no confidence against every single board member who had supported the discriminatory bylaw. They all resigned en masse, facing potential personal lawsuits. A new, far more reasonable board was elected within days. Brenda herself wasn't spared. My attorney sent her a cease and desist order for harassment, outlining her fabricated claims and constant surveillance. More critically, the new HOA board, trying to mitigate their damages, decided to make an example. They launched an investigation into all of Brenda's past complaints. It turned out she had filed dozens of frivolous complaints, costing the HOA countless hours and minor legal fees over the years. They slapped her with a massive fine for abuse of HOA resources and vexatious litigation against fellow residents, citing clauses she herself had often quoted. Update 1. 3 weeks later, the federal settlement was finalized. The Willow Creek Estates HOA was ordered to pay a significant sum for damages, legal fees, and corrective training for all future board members. The costs were astronomical. To cover it, the HOA special assessed every single homeowner in Willow Creek Estates a hefty sum. Even Brenda had to pay. Update 2. 6 weeks on, the poorly drawn property lines became a major issue for Viridian Homes, the original developer. My lawsuit had highlighted the negligence. Viridian was forced to conduct a full, professional survey of the entire subdivision, correcting every single misdrawn boundary. My little triangular patch near the curb? Turns out it was always mine, and Brenda had been meticulously trimming my grass for months, believing it was hers. Update 3. Brenda couldn't handle the financial hit from the special assessment, the fines from the new HOA board, and the humiliation. She put her house on the market. It sat there for months, priced too high, and with the HOA litigation history disclosure, it was a hard sell. I still see her sometimes, leaving her house for a showing, a small, defeated figure. Atlas and I continue our walks, unbothered, enjoying the quiet of Willow Creek Estates. The grass on my side is exactly 3.5 inches. Perfectly legal,